Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Only Stupid Answers. This is the show where we answer your questions about movies, TV shows, comic books, severances, and more. I'm your host, DJ Wooldridge. With me, as always, is Roxy Stryer.
What's up, DJ?
Are you any Roxy or outie Roxy?
Today I'm any Roxy.
Any Roxy. With us today, we've got a very special guest, Mr. Lon Harris. Lon, any or outie?
Oh, I think I'm definitely the innie. I never
Innie?
leave. I don't leave my apartment anyway. I might as well be severed.
Might as what's the difference? What's the difference?
That makes you outie. If you never leave home, you're outie.
Well, my home is my office.
See?
So I'm like Mark S. I got in the elevator, I close my eyes, I go to sleep, and then I open my eyes, I'm back at work.
I had forgotten. If you got people, you guys can't tell by our conversation, we're going to be talking about Severance this week. Is it a hit show on Apple?
Yes.
I think it's a hit show on Apple. In my heart, it's a hit show on Apple.
If we're speaking relatively by the standards of Apple, it's a huge hit. If
Good.
we're speaking by the standards of Landman, no, nobody.
Landman.
Landman is the gold standard.
Landman, the gold standard. Well, no, Landman is Landman is one of the very few Paramount Plus shows that is getting that kind of like escape velocity.
Dude,
like
what
Tulsa
is?
King had it, Landman has it, but that's about it. It's very hard for Paramount Plus to get a show like up into the upper echelons. They rarely make that happen.
We're now entering the peak era of articles trying to explain the world we live in, and there was in the last month there was an article about like how Hollywood stuff was kind of skewing more towards like middle America, so like using Twisters as an example and stuff like that. And I was going to ask like, what is Taylor Sheridan's secret sauce? And it's like, well, I mean, maybe that. I don't know, maybe that. I don't like to generalize, but anyway. We're not talking about.
There is a thing. I would just point this out with Taylor Sheridan.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to get into red state, blue state culture war.
Why not? Let's do it.
To be disrespectful. But there is a thing. If you are a person from a blue state, you can adopt like red state demeanor and viewpoint, and they will accept you as one of their own. Because like Taylor Sheridan.
Yeah.
Not like from a ranch, like was on Veronica Mars.
Yes.
Like he's an LA guy, and like but he talks the talk, it feels authentic enough, and so yeah, he can create those shows and those people will watch it. And Yellowstone is beloved in Middle America, even though he's not a Middle America guy. I would say like George W. Bush and Donald Trump were the same way.
What are you trying to tell me?
Blue state, big city guys.
Yeah,
but if you like. Texas loves a guy who loves Texas. It doesn't actually matter if you're from there.
Wait, are you trying to tell me that Joe Rogan isn't actually like salt of the earth, like grew up in the
news radio series regular Joe Rogan?
But why haven't I been embraced? Here I am loving these shows. I'm just an LA girl loving the shows.
I feel like you're a slight twang in the voice and a cowboy hat away. Honestly,
Roxy, I'm
saying this in a joking way. We're on a funny show.
Yeah,
I am being.
I'm gonna double down on what Lon said. Put on a cowboy hat and do stuff that like stuff that is typically coded as male in a bikini. Play with guns in a bikini, go fishing in a bikini.
It doesn't even have to go that far. If you start going on the show, a little bit more Western flair in the clothing, in the style.
Yeah.
If you started saying like, "Hey y'all, welcome to the show," if you every once in a while drop like, "So I was listening to that new Jason Aldean song on the way," like you're it.
I don't
That's
even
it.
know who that is.
So we're offering you a spectrum of selling out that
Who is Jason Aldean?
He sings a lot of songs about driving your truck to the lake.
Oh. This is my country song. Chicken and beer, chicken and beer.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that's the like Red Solo Cup eras, like that's one generation back.
Okay, and just to clarify for people that are getting mad at us, of the three on the call, I'm pretty sure I'm the one. I did grow up in the South, and what we're not making fun of those things. We're making fun of people that disingenuously adopt those things to be rich and famous.
I also started, just to be abundantly clear, I love those things.
Yeah.
So
that's what I believe you could authentically embrace like Southern culture, and they would absolutely embrace you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. There might be, we don't want to get in the weeds. There might be certain aspects of your background that you might not want to bring up, but
yeah.
I just have to hide everything about who I really am, and then I can be loved.
Then you'll be loved.
Just like if you're Greek or you're Italian, who's gonna argue?
Yeah.
Who's gonna know?
Yeah.
Just fall back. Fall back on that.
Although as somebody that is part Greek, a lot of times people think I'm part black. So you know,
there was a Euro place on Sunset Boulevard that I used to go for lunch. And the very first time I went in there, it was all Greek guys working by there. They thought they just started talking Greek to me. They thought I was Greek. So I've always remembered that if I ever need to like not make a big thing out of the Jew stuff.
Yeah. Go Greek. Go Greek. Yeah.
Papadopoulos. There you go.
I can confirm what DJ said, though. The amount of jobs that we've worked together where something has come up and they're like, oh, well, maybe DJ can speak on that. And I'm like, DJ, my Greek friend?
Yeah. No, unfortunately, no. Thanks for thinking of me. Anyway, listen. Severance. That's what we're talking about before we get into Severance.
Let's get back.
Little business up top, as always. If you want to watch live, if you want to listen ad-free, if you want to check out Patreon exclusive shows like Mutant Academy, you can do that over patreon.com/onlystupidanswers. If you're listening on iTunes, please give us a 5 stars. If you're on YouTube, leave a comment, or Spotify. We take comments from there. We got some comments from last week's episode, which was about Jason Momoa coming back into the DCU and who else could come back and be recast. Comic Q837 said, get Henry Cavill as the Question. Solves the whole, quote, he looks like Superman issue. Plus, his voice would work great for a detective noir. I like Henry Cavill, and I love the Question. I don't know that I see it, but I wouldn't be against it.
Why, if you are Henry Cavill's agent, are you like, yeah,
get him a character that, dude, Roxy, you may have just cracked a mystery that the Question is one of my all-time favorite. Vic Sage, the Question is one of my favorite DC characters. Love him. And I'm like, why have we never gotten an adaptation? And you just cracked it. You don't see the guy's face. That's the point of the character.
Face. Yeah, no face. It's a voice acting role.
Yeah. Get Shitty. I'm not going to read this whole comment, but he had some suggestions that I thought, or they had some suggestions that I thought were really good, like Henry Cavill's Vandal Savage. And I just liked it because, man, I never think about Vandal Savage, and he'd be a great villain in one of these things. But anyway, go check that out, that comment. And on Spotify, Yeshu Wazalewski said, if they all had to come back in some role or another, Ben Affleck as Alfred, Gal Gadot as Hippolyta, Ezra Miller as Cho Chill, Ray Fisher as Darkseid, he's got the voice for it, and Henry Cavill as Deathstroke. I do support that casting. He'd be pretty good as Deathstroke.
I like that. Would Affleck be our first ever non-British Alfred? There's something that strikes me as really deeply, fundamentally wrong about a non-British guy.
I agree.
Could he try to do a British Alfred?
Do it.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I want to hear him try it. So
you won't. You won't
do it. Oh my God.
I want to help you out, Mr. Wayne.
Oh my God, guys! I was just thinking about my pick for Alfred, and the actor's name just shot right out of my brain.
So I'm just gonna try to describe him.
We're just gonna move on. But I will say,
I feel like you always it's now you have to make that decision. Are you doing like old man paternal, like Michael Caine, Michael Gough Alfred, or is it like kind of badass modern day like tactical Alfred? Because like we still got that like. I feel like the new take on Alfred is like he was a secret air service badass,
dude. To the point that in the new Absolute Batman reboot, like he literally is with like MI6 or whatever the British.
Right, yeah. And I don't love that. I feel like he's supposed to be. He's like a butler. He's like kindly old butler figure who raised Bruce Wayne, not who trained Bruce Wayne.
Okay, so here's my pick to that point, Lon. To that point, I think what I would really like to see is just go in the opposite direction. What I would perceive as opposite direction. I would cast Richard E. Grant, who fans of this our genre stuff might know is classic Loki on Loki, and I would make Alfred queer. I'd make him like an old queen, like because I don't think there's enough camp in Batman anymore, and to have Alfred be the guy that's like, listen, man, you're dressing as a bat. Let's get into it. Let's really dive into it.
it's the Batman the animated series where he's a little bitchy.
Yeah. I'm a guy that can call Bruce, like Bruce is all
he's a little
aggro,
judgy.
super masculine, and so you have Alfred to cut that a little bit and be like, "Hey, man, take a breath." I think that'd be great.
Yeah, I like that. I don't love tactical Alfred as much.
It's too much.
I want him to be the tux, and he's like fixing the snacks.
Yeah.
Tactical works better on the TV shows though, because you do have to give him kind of more to do.
Yeah.
And you have so many episodes, and you just gotta
and he's got to
give him
be
more skills. Yeah.
He's got to be in the cave helping out somehow. Yeah. I get what you're saying.
Roxy, before we go too far, did you want any fire updates? Did you want any? Do you have any fire updates?
I really wanted some fire updates. Crazy enough, I was thinking that this week was going to be the week that I was like, obviously they're done. No more fires.
No.
Another sleepless night for your girl Rox, as a new fire started a couple of nights ago at 1:30 in the morning. And this one was at the Getty Center exit on the 405, which is called the Sepulveda fire. And they did an unbelievable job of putting out the fire. It was out like within 4 hours, which is a short period of time now, apparently. I thought a fire that was lasting for anything more than 5 minutes was a long fire. But now that we've had 3-week-long fires, the Altadena fire is so significantly better, if not 100% out. It's at like 90% containment. The Palisades fire is around 70% containment. So things are trending in the right direction, but new fires popping up is not a good thing. And there are more winds predicted this week.
Yeah,
so
there's still things.
Listen, guys, President Trump lands in LA in just a few hours. So he's going to figure the whole thing out. I mean, I'm perfectly confident by the time he leaves, it's all going to be taken care of.
Well, there was something funny that he did say. It's not funny, but I did watch the inauguration. That's not what this video is about. But in regards to the fire update, he said, I'm not going to try to do his voice. I have a lot of rich friends who lost their homes. Some of them are in this room. Interesting. That was the word he said. He said, interesting. And I thought, what?
I do.
What does that mean?
I have gotten
I don't know if he was conspiracy theorizing or whether he was saying like, this doesn't, like, now we should pay attention because it's rich people. I don't know what interesting implied, but I thought interesting was an interesting choice of words for all of the lives.
I do think there's an element because a lot of wealthy people were affected. Just to be clear, we've said this on the show, not especially when you're getting into the what was it, the Altadena fire. Not all super, just a lot of just average folks.
Generational.
Yeah. So it's not just wealthy people, but because there's a component of wealthier people, there does seem to be a trend of like, wait, shouldn't we be able to like, shouldn't our money insulate us from this sort of thing? And it's like, well, welcome to the new world, man.
Interesting.
Did you see those? There were a lot of tweets from people in the Palisades where they were in real time. They were trying to like, hey, does anybody know a private firefighter service that could come douse my home with water? And it's like, yeah, it really is that moment of like, yeah, I mean, you know, if you're very rich, you don't think you need public services. No. You want to cut them to save tax money until
you need them.
There are still things that your money can't completely insulate you from, and like a raging wildfire is one of them. I was just going to say, I think there's a few misconceptions everybody has about Los Angeles who's not from here or doesn't spend time here that really impacted this news story. The first one is how big Los Angeles is.
I had to explain to my parents, like, they're like, the LA County is like Pinellas County. I'm like, no, it's not.
Yeah. Like, if Philadelphia caught on fire, it would be a big deal for everybody in Philadelphia. It's just not that big. Like, once you get outside of the core city, they call the places other things.
Yeah.
So it's not, but like LA, we call this huge place LA. So people were hearing like, LA's been on fire for a week. How are you not impacted? It's like, LA's huge. It's like across the city. It's the other place. And the other one is, that everybody in LA is like part of the movie industry and very wealthy. And it's like, No, Altadena is like a normal suburban community full of families and regular folks. Yeah.
So before I mentioned some places you can help last week. The one that I did mention that came to my attention after the episode that I did want to mention here is the ARC Firefighter Fund. This is specifically for a lot of inmates that volunteer to fight fires, and they are paid between $5.80 and $10.24 per day to fight the fires.
I really don't understand, and I'm not. We don't have to get it. I know I'm saying it's your guys to explain it to me.
Yeah.
How is it legal for us to pay prisoners who are doing a job less than the?
We actually voted on this past year,
Yeah.
and it was
right.
shot
No,
down.
I remember that. It just seems like there's another law that should supersede that.
No,
Like you
this
can't
was
pay
the
anybody
law.
under the minimum wage.
Yeah, because
we voted on.
I remember. Yeah.
It's
Well, I
literally
didn't.
called slavery in prison,
Mhm.
and we voted to keep it.
Yeah.
Which at the time when I posted being the most egregious part of the entire election that nobody was speaking about, I got so much heat. Nobody would ever do that. People are not being worked to the bone. They're literally fighting fires for $5
Yeah.
a
So
day.
a day.
And then after they are out, the vast majority of them are not allowed to have that job because they
Right,
don't
they weren't hired
qualify
them.
because of their background.
Well,
so
listen, Roxy, I'm being sarcastic. They're all criminals. All of them, are, even though they're fighting, there are fires for us, whatever. Anyway,
I did read about there is a law. The state is now debating changing that law. So like creating a new system for if you were a firefighter in prison, you can apply to become a firefighter
Chelsea
as a career once you're out of prison.
The point is,
you're already experienced. You've done the job. Why would we hire anyone else?
And also, shouldn't the principle of that incarceration be that they can become functioning members of society when they get out of that? It's not supposed to be like a forever punishment. Anyway, we're not going to get off on all that.
Time.
Yeah, exactly. We're not going to, whatever. But point is, if you also think it's egregious to fight fires for $5 a day and would like to help the inmates that are helping fight the fires, there will be a link in the description, or you can go to antirecidivism.org/firefighter fund and check that out. So now with all of that out of the way, let's talk about a different dystopia, one on our TVs. Let's talk about Severance. And Roxy had watched the first episode when we did last week's episode. I had not. And so I texted her after I watched it because, like everybody here, I was so excited for it to come back. I forgot what a fucking nightmare the reality of this show is. Like it is. It's like this is my worst nightmare. What is it, Helly? In season, I'm Helly. I'm like, why? It'd be the worst thing ever.
Yeah, I stand by my theory that I texted you.
I think you're right. We'll get into it in a second, but I think you might be right. But anyway, so we're 2 episodes in. We had episode 1 was Hello, Miss Coble. Episode 2 was Goodbye, Mrs. Selvig. Lon, you're our guest. Let's start with you. What are you thinking about Severance season 2 so far?
Oh, I love it. When season 1 ended all those years ago,
yes,
I wondered how are they gonna put this lightning back in the bottle. It almost seemed like the finale. It was so good. It was such a big change. It felt like almost it broke the press for me. I was like, how could we go back to the show that we were enjoying after this has happened? And the last 2 episodes, I think, where they show us how they're going to do that was really masterful. It moves things to a different level. It sets them on it's exactly like what I was saying with Taylor Sheridan.
Yeah.
It figures out a new direction for the story to go that feels organic and natural and logical for the characters, but it doesn't just feel like we're redoing last season. It feels like we're giving them some new stuff to explore. And I thought that's not that they make it seem sort of effortless, but I don't think that's easy to do. And that's kind of a theme for this whole season is things that seem kind of tossed off or effortless, but then you think about it, you're like, that must have been really hard to do. Like that opening shot of Adam Scott running through all the hallways, that unbroken shot.
Yep.
And it takes you a while to realize it's not physically possible. Like the camera's swooping around Adam Scott wider than the hallway. Like you start thinking about the practicality of doing that sequence, and it's like crazy and mind-blowing. I don't know if you guys even saw this, but in this past week, the most recent episode, they actually do a shot where it's all of them, the Audis arriving one by one back at Lumen and going back down to the floor.
Yeah.
And they timed it perfectly with the conclusion of episode 1 when you're seeing that same thing from Mark S's perspective in the office where they're all arriving on the elevators one by one and he's re-greeting them.
Yeah.
The timing is exactly right on those two sequences. They like work. I saw a tweet where somebody put them on top of one another and
That's
you can watch them in
wild.
tandem. So they're doing all of this stuff that's really like high wire, very complicated, but making it seem so natural and so much just like part of the Lumen experience. I think it's really impressive.
I read that in regards to the first thing that you said, Lon, about the opening shot of him running through the hallways, a couple of different really cool things about this. And this is one of the only shows that after every episode, I deep dive into like, how'd you do that? How did that happen?
Right.
Number one, the way that at least Adam Scott in his head was thinking about this is he was trying to embody Tom Cruise in these moments, which it makes perfect sense and is great. And then Ben Stiller talked about the fact that this was actually made up of 10 different pieces, this opening sequence of them running, and those 10 different pieces they shot over a period of 5 months.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Wild. Yeah.
It's crazy.
That is so crazy. He said he explained the scene was difficult to pull off. Technically, each one had a different need in terms of what had to be done on set. So there was one where we had to do it completely with green screen. Then you have to do one on a treadmill and have a motion control camera. Then there was one we had to do pull one of the walls out, and we were using the machine called a bolt arm. That's a motion controlled robot arm with cameras on it. So that's pretty cool it didn't look amazing, but 5 months to do that.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, well, that's part of the 3 years you guys took, I guess.
Yeah.
I feel like the last show I did that with, where it was like that, was the first season of True Detective, where after every episode there was at least one sequence or one thing where I was like, how did they pull that off, or what was going on with that? And I'd have to like go deep dive. Like, remember that one unbroken shot shootout from season 1? Yeah,
it blew everybody's mind, and then it became like a thing. Like, can we do our own True Detective? Can we do our own little? Yeah, I think. Well, one, it always blows my mind that Ben Stiller, of all people, is just as a director, because he directed the first episode, and props to the director. I don't have the director of the second episode's name, but like keeping up, because like Ben Stiller, I've talked on the show Escape from Dannemora, which he directed. It's like Ben Stiller has always been a talented director when you think about like his comedies, Tropic Thunder, Zoolander, but like his TV stuff, it's like, this is you're just another level. It's just insane. I am excited. I did not realize how much I would appreciate getting the core cast back together, but these past 2 episodes, like, oh yeah, I really do like these people. I really do like them together. I'm really rooting for these people. We talked a little bit before the show came on, but between this and Squid Game and Arcane, this is one of 3 shows I've watched in the past month where there's been a multi-year break, and it's like, wow, there's certain things I just don't remember. Like, I just don't, because this episode, in episode 2, we get more into Patricia Arquette's character, and they're like, yeah, this happened and this happened. I'm like, wait, what happened? Because they talk about, they were talking about the baby. He was talking about the baby being alive. I'm like, wait, what happened with the baby?
I did go back and watch the finale again, and that just watching the one episode was extremely helpful for specifically that purpose. Just as a shout out to what you mentioned earlier, DJ, his name is Samuel Donovan. That's the director of the second episode, and he'll actually be directing the 5th episode as well.
Yeah, also very good.
Repeat episodes same directors for different episodes, which is really cool. It seems like everybody who gets their hands on this knows what it is, and that it's very tight knit, which is what we were worried about between seasons, because we had heard that the co-creators were not on the same page, and that is partially what took so long to get to this season, that they were having creative differences. And when you hear that, you're like, oh no, is this going to meander? Do we know what we're doing? But I do feel like between episode 1 and 2, I feel extremely confident that they have a clear point of view here. And I did love that 2 was the counterpoint to 1. I feel like this would have been an easy thing to make a 2-night premiere, because trusting that episode 1 will bring you back for 2 with still so many questions of how did this happen is challenging. But I like that they made us wait a week for this, because then when there are some reveals in episode 2 of like, oh, how did we get here? This is how we got here. Because if you're like me, all week you were wondering, how did they convince these people to come back?
Yeah.
Right.
How on earth Did you get these people to come back? Did you get these people to come back? What am I actually watching? Has Elon Musk been right this entire time and we're living in a virtual reality?
Yeah.
What is this? So I think that that's really cool that they let us wait a week with these questions. And then they're like, here's a couple answers and 500 more questions.
Yeah, I think Apple they don't have a lot of golden gooses on Apple TV Plus. Like it's this one, it's Ted Lasso. I'm trying to think if they've got any other
I think
morning show.
I've got to imagine Solo's doing enough for them since they greenlit 2 more seasons. So Solo's got to have enough juice. I feel like
those are shows that would be like on the bubble for any other streamer. That is just like Apple. They really only have a few of these. They're very precious. So I feel like Disney Plus might have dumped 3 Severances all at once. You know, like Amazon Prime Video would definitely put these 2 up together as the season premiere. And I feel like Apple's not doing that because every episode they want to like it's a rare and precious gift that they have to dole out gently. Like look how much promotion they're doing behind Severance season 2. You had the Grand Central Station stunt. They were at the Knicks game the next day. Then did you see today? There's that Tim Cook promo.
No.
Where there's a new promo that just went up this morning where Tim Cook goes to work at Lumen. Like they show him putting the name tag on and getting in the elevator.
Yeah. That's less fun. It's not all, that's a little too
well, it's so on the nose that Apple is the company making this because it is sort of like
it'd be like
company.
It'd be like Bezos showing up at like Vought headquarters. I'm like, oh, okay, all right.
Well, especially like the way they talk about Kier and like the mythology behind Lumen and the great genius who founded it. Like there is a touch of the Steve Jobs mythologizing around.
The thing that's cool though that they deviate from in this and that we see in that second episode for kind of not the first full time, but I guess the first full time, but not the first tiny time, is when we see how you're treated as a severed. So like usually if you work for a big company like Apple or Google in society, when we're talking to you, we're like, ooh, fancy. Ooh, I want to hire you for this job. And when they see that he works for Lumen, they're like, ooh, Lumen. But when they find out you're a severed, then you lose all respect and credibility. And we've seen that, of course, with Mark's sister as well, how your family treats you, but also in the workforce. Like, it's fine to work for Lumen. It's not cool to be a severed.
It's like getting your mind circumcised.
Right.
2 things I wanted to talk about for this episode. One, I think Trammell Tillman, who plays Milchick, he's giving the best performance like on TV right now. And I feel like it's not getting enough praise. Like he's so good. It's funny, but it's also scary. Like, and he's got that corporate speak PR intensity just down so perfectly. The way that, you know, big corporations and you know, the sort of official communication is so cheery and pleasant, but also has this constant condescending tone. Like you're a child and everything needs to be explained to you. And I mean, every single line of dialogue, this guy nails. Like, I feel like he should be getting every award.
I'm with you, Lon, and I think it's so interesting that he's the one I can't peg down at all. I'm like, how aware is he? Is he as aware as his predecessor was? Or is he being told what to do? Like, how much does he know how awful this is? Because as we see in this episode with Patricia Arquette, in that one car moment where she absolutely freaks out, talking about a brilliant performance. We always felt like she was the mastermind, like she knew what was going on. With Milchick, I don't know how smart he is versus how dedicated he is.
And we see something interesting too, because I kind of thought that they got away. There's a cult aspect in Lumen that I thought they got away with the Severeds because they don't know what the world is like outside. But then when they're talking to Milchick, you know, let Cure guide you. I'm like, oh. So this is kind of more pervasive in this cult atmosphere is more pervasive in the company than I realized.
And last season too, Patricia Arquette, she had that Kier shrine in her home.
Yeah,
that she
that's
was, like,
right.
praying to. So like, there are some real believers in that philosophy, even in like the reality world, the outie world.
Yeah.
The one other thing I wanted to talk about, I feel like this week gave us our first real sense that all of this, or at least a lot of what's happening around Mark, is like for his benefit in almost a Truman Show way. Like there was that dialogue like, none of the other employees matter. None of this matters. We just need Mark to finish his work. He's got to finish this project. That's the important thing. You know, like they're firing Bob Balaban. He's not important. And they were going to fire Zach Cherry and John Turturro. But then when Mark wants them back, they bring them back. It's almost like this whole thing only exists because of Mark and the work Mark's doing.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up. Yeah, that's an interesting angle. The job he's working on, specifically Cold Harbor, and in the Discord.
Right, Cold Harbor.
Yeah, to that point, Mike Joyce in the Discord says the Severance subreddit has deduced that based on the image toward the end of the premiere, and I have the image in front of me. Unfortunately, I should have gave an asset to you guys.
Painting?
No, there's a screen grab. I know what the scene they're talking about. Milchick's looking at the computer, and it's a screen grab of Mrs. Casey, who is Mark's wife in the outside world, and now is Miss Casey on the inside. And it's a screen grab of that. I guess what the subreddit is saying that the work Mark and his company are doing is repairing Mark's wife's brain. Could Lumen have been able to save her from the accident, but only if she was severed? And now that they're trying to repair the rest of the brain, and looking at this, it's Gemma's face, and in the corner you can see it says Cold Harbor, and it says 60%. So I'm assuming there's a little bar that says 60% done.
That's a good. There's a Philip K. Dick
what's
book.
The theory on that, DJ? Sorry,
just the theory is that this whole project is about bringing Mark's wife back from the dead, basically.
Or reconstructing her brain somehow, and that's what they're doing in MDR. That's the micro data they're refining.
60% is how back she is.
One presumes. It just says, there's a bar, and it's 60% full, and it says 60%. So I guess how far the project has to go. And I was going to be honest, this was going to lead me to a question of like, how confident are we that they're going to stick the landing here? Because I feel like once we start going into like, oh, Lon's like, it could be all for Mark's benefit. It could be about bring Gemma back. I'm like, I don't know that I like any of those explanations.
Well, I don't think it is. They say that one line.
Let me finish. Go ahead.
They say that one line in this episode about Mark where they're like, we just need him back till the end of this thing.
Yeah.
Which doesn't sound like, I mean, this was started so long before Mark was born, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think this entire thing is about the birth of Mark and Gemma. I do think that he might be the unlucky son of a bitch that this to his wife and they randomly picked her, but I don't think this is like.
But why would they need him to keep working? Why couldn't they just have other severed people doing this same work for?
Because that's her husband.
But why does that matter?
Yeah, but it does to your point, Lon, that if it is about Mark, maybe it being about Gemma really, and then Mark's connected to it. I think it was Roxy floated the theory last year. This was years ago, the first season, that the work is them, that they are basically they are the guinea pigs. It really doesn't matter what they're doing, that they're just guinea pigs in this project, which I liked, but now I think that's kind of been blown up a little bit by the comment of like, actually we need Mark to stay.
Whatever the explanation is, it's got to explain why they need Mark specifically to keep doing this work and not any of the other people who are also doing that work. They think they're doing the same job as Mark, but none of their work matters. Only Mark's work matters because they can be fired and replaced at will.
Yeah. So I guess my question
here's what I was going to say. Yeah. There's a Philip K. Dick book called Time Out of Joint. It's complicated. It basically opens like the Truman Show. A guy, his job is every week there's a puzzle that gets published in the newspaper and you win a cash prize if you solve it. And he solves it every single week and wins the cash prize. And that's how he supports himself.
Yeah.
And otherwise he lives in this very idyllic, picturesque suburban community. But just like Truman Show, he starts to suspect like maybe my reality is not real. Like I can't leave town.
Yeah.
Some things are not. It's very much like Truman Show. People accuse Truman Show of ripping this book off when it came out. Anyway, what he eventually figures out is this puzzle he's solving in the newspaper every day is actually a combat plan. Earth is at war with an alien race, and every week they send an attack down, and he actually has the psychic ability to know where the attack is going to come. Mm-hmm. He thinks he's just solving a newspaper puzzle, but he's actually telling Earth's defenses where to go to protect the planet. And the pressure of doing that every week was so intense for him that the only way he could do it was they created this simulation where it's just a puzzle he has to solve. It's not like a big deal. And so he actually asked to be put in this like Truman Show environment so he could do this very important job.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
So that to me, especially now that you're saying it could be about reconstructing his wife's brain, what if he couldn't? He's the only guy that can do this because of his connection to Gemma.
Yeah.
What if he can't do the work when he's conscious and aware of what he's doing? It's too much pressure. He can't handle it. But severed Mark can just do it.
What about Lumen before, though? It's just the hole in this is that they existed prior to this.
Yeah, but I think the company
they were developing some other process and then they figured out they could do this. So I feel like you could thread that needle, but I do think it explains a lot of these things about like what's this weird job he's doing? Why is it important he's the one doing it? Why can't he bring his Earth memories with him into the job? All of that stuff. It does kind of cool. I feel like it's got to be something semi like.
I'm kind of the opinion that it's like I kind of don't care what the job is. It's more about the being severed. It's like I actually don't really care what the reveal is of what they're doing or why they're doing it. It's more about like this situation. So it's because I'm worried that
like any puzzle box show, it comes down to the relationships and the characters. That's what keeps you tuning in week to week.
I'm just worried I know, but I'm worried the reveal is gonna be a bummer, and it's one of those like when you like it's gonna let me down, and then that could hurt the whole show. But I also wanted to bring up another Roxy theory by way of this question from Stacey Guetta. Do you think Helly was keeping her true identity a secret from the others out of fear or shame, or is Outie Helly now on the inside pretending to be Annie Helly? And when I texted Roxy about it, the show, I was like, I watched it. She's like, I think the Helly downstairs is actually Outie Helly. And I was like, I don't know. And then watching this episode, as the episode was going on, it's like, I think they're going to confirm. I think this episode's going to reveal that it is Outie Helly. And they don't do that. But it's like, we don't see her go down the elevator.
I think it's definitely got to be Outie Helly. Because the way that they describe it and the way that they show it is setting us up for a big reveal. Like, as Helly in this episode is watching, Outie Helly is watching Annie Helly, and she's like, as they speak about it in the end, if you guys stay for the conversation about the show, they talk about how she is this like uppity person who thinks so highly of herself, but she doesn't feel love, and how strange it is to watch yourself have all of the things that you need. So not only do I think that she is Outie Helly because she was unwilling to go back in and, potentially off herself again, which almost happened to her.
Yeah.
But I think she wants to feel what Annie Helly is feeling because I think she is malicious and twisted. What I think could be a cool twist on this, what they might do, is it might actually change her and she might actually become Annie Helly because maybe it is about life circumstances. Yeah. And maybe once you do feel love and once you do feel kinship and once you are removed from your psycho ass family, maybe really Annie and Outie Helly are the same person and you do change in there. So I'm hoping that if they do decide to make Annie Helly actually Outie Helly, she doesn't become the big bad. She actually becomes Annie Helly.
And props to that.
I do think they're. Oh, sorry.
No, go for it.
I was just gonna say obviously the love that's formed between Mark and Helly is the innies is going to be like thematically really resonant and important for I think the rest of the show because Mark also had the same reaction when he found out, you're so miserable here, but your innie has fallen in love, and you could see his whole demeanor changed because he realized some aspect of me is ready to move on. I don't feel that way, but this other version of me does. So
you don't think he thought in that moment that he was talking about Gemma?
I don't know. I think it's just the idea. I mean, he doesn't know specifically like my innie is like he just knows his innie has some insight into what happened to his wife. So I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting thing to theorize around. I feel like the way Adam Scott was playing it, it was just surprised that he's capable of feeling those things again because in his grieving, depressed state, that seems so far off. If you're
his first question though is with who, and that was interesting to me because I was like, is it starting to click to him that maybe his wife, maybe like per his
Yeah.
sister,
Oh, I do think.
maybe.
Yeah, I think for sure he's thinking about, has my innie had some experience where he's seen Gemma. I think that's
Yeah.
definitely on his mind there.
Yeah.
But I also think it's just the possibility that he could, any version of him could be feeling, those kinds of feelings, despite how he feels. I also thought it was interesting that Milchick suggests, if you give us enough time, the happiness that your innie feels will like migrate over to your outie, which does seem to violate everything they've ever said about
Yeah.
severing and how it's supposed to work.
Well,
So it's like, is that a propagandistic thing? Is that a lie that they tell people? Like, if you're happy when you're an innie, it'll eventually make your outie happy too. Or is that something that Lumen really believes? Like, this could psychologically benefit people over time?
Or even if they don't really believe it, is that something they tell Milchick, who's
Yeah.
kind of a sheep, and that's
Right.
how he
Yeah.
believes.
It's like unclear how far the propaganda goes,
which is how
Yeah.
propaganda works. But yeah, I think and one thing that we'll have to figure out in the show eventually is how they resolve, because this show, they get a lot of mileage in these 2 episodes of like, hey, if this person doesn't come back, they're functionally dead. The severed version, if they don't go back down the thing, they're functionally, so
Right.
for all intents and purposes, if it is Outie Helly pretending to be any Helly's done until they decide to do that again, and they'll have to resolve that, like, because I can't imagine the show resolving of like, no, we're going to keep the severance system going. So it's like, you're going to have to, do they integrate? Do we sacrifice
That would
the
it
innies?
would be really hard. I mean, she would have to really prepare to portray her alternate self convincingly. She'd have to like watch all the footage and like study herself, and because she has no memory of what the other Hilly has experienced or who these people are.
And props to Britt Lauer, the actress that plays Helly, because her performance just 180 on Outie Helly.
Yeah.
And before we moved on, I did also want to mention Keanu Reeves voicing the video they play in the first season.
Did you catch too? I did not catch. I obviously right away read that it was Keanu Reeves.
Yeah.
It's Sarah Sherman from SNL as the water tower.
Yeah.
As well.
Yep.
Cool.
Great. Awesome. Also, did this show used to have an opening credits? Because this second episode has an opening credits that is nightmarish.
It did have one, but they changed it.
It's
a new animated. They had an animated opening for season 1. They just did a new one.
It's the new one is a nightmare, and it's like, this is very cool, and I will skip it every time because I don't need to see this every week anyway. So we had a comment. One of the comments last week was like, "Hey," because Roxanne talked about some political stuff. Like, "Hey, I don't care for the political talk on my entertainment show." And while I truly do understand where that sentiment is coming from, too bad, because one of the questions I have coming from this dystopia of Severance is, I wonder how, I think one of the reasons that this show resonates with people is because it is relatable in the sense of how the corporation of Lumen is controlling. One of the nightmarish parts of it is how it controls information. We see that specifically in episode 2, how we're able to tell our Audi version something that is not like, what is it? He's telling John Turturro, like, your innie is actually a friend of mine. It's like, that's bullshit. that is not true, but there's no way of knowing. They're controlling information. And of course, that made me think of the reality we live in, where you can feel the organs of power try and take control of specifically social media. And this brings me to a news story this week. Mr. Beast may buy TikTok. This is coming from Gizmodo. Jimmy Donaldson, aka Mr. Beast, posted on X, the Everything app. Okay, fine. I'll buy TikTok so it doesn't get banned. And then it went on to say, unironically, I've had so many billionaires reach out to me since I tweeted this. Let's see if we can pull this off. On Tuesday of this week, Donaldson communicated to CNN that he was serious about buying the social media platform, and that is now part of a group of U.S. investors who are pushing to procure the site. Right. The Paul Hastings law firm.
That's the key thing. The key thing is everybody's saying, like, Mr. Beast is going to buy TikTok. A big group of money people that are going to buy TikTok brought him in to make him the face of it. Well, it's not like Mr. Beast is going to own it.
And while we're doing corrections, people are kind of like, well, TikTok's not banned now. Trump fixed it. It is. If you delete the app on your phone and you try to download it again, you're not going to be able to because it's banned, because it is banned. There's a stay of execution for like what? Delon, do you know how many days until like they have?
90 days. I think he
No,
gave.
it's
he gave-
200 and something, I think.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, well, we'll
Yeah.
see.
Basically, the U.S. government is like, you're not going to be able to run TikTok in the U.S. unless you sell your American operations to somebody else. TikTok has so far, ByteDance, the owner, has so far said no.
Yeah.
They're just calling our bluff, and they think that because so many Americans love TikTok. TikTok seems to believe that we're not going to go through with it because it would be so radically unpopular. And so I think that now we're extending the deadline, but I don't know. It sort of seems like we're going to need more leverage. It just seems like they're going to call our bluff again.
Yeah. I was just thinking about this. Could you imagine another country doing that to like, well, sorry, if you want like X to run in our company, Elon, you're going to have to sell it to somebody in our region. It's like, what?
I mean, that is the sort of the argument they're making here is, well, that is what China, like, you can't just run your company in China and let Chinese people on it. They don't allow that either. It's like how Netflix isn't in China. They've got their own version of Netflix, and they occasionally maybe will license a show or two, but none of our streaming services, none of our social media platforms operate in China. You know, you don't go on YouTube in China, you go on Baidu or whatever. So that's what a lot of Americans are saying. It's like, well, why do we're just giving them a taste of their own medicine. We're saying, well, you can't run your platforms in our country. I don't like that. I don't subscribe to that philosophy because we don't want to be like China. They're a repressive, autocratic regime.
Now, hold on, Lon. Are you sure we don't want to be like China? I'm not entirely, because you just said an oppressive regime. I'm like, maybe we do want to be.
People in charge want us to be like China, but we shouldn't be. I don't think we should be emulating Chinese policy in that way. I think we're about freedom, and if you want to be on TikTok and you're American, you should be allowed to be on TikTok.
What do you think, Roxy, about Mr. Beast spearheading the purchase of? Now, you said something too. Would the American thing, just to clarify, would they own just the American operations of TikTok, or would they own TikTok?
Well, it's up to TikTok and whoever buys it. I mean, ByteDance has the right. They could sell the whole brand entirely if they wanted to, but the U.S. law just says it's just TikTok U.S.
U.S. Okay.
They're not saying. I mean, they don't have the power to ban it in, France.
Yeah.
Like it's only. It's the American division. You know how like companies have different divisions that operate in different kinds. It was like TikTok US, like BBC America. Like TikTok US would have to have its own non-Chinese owner.
So Roxy,
TikTok that runs in China can still be owned by Chinese.
Would you like to see Mr. Beast save TikTok?
I mean, there was a lot of names thrown out there. At first, it was Kevin O'Leary. Then it was Elon Musk. Then it was Mr. Beast. Doesn't really make a difference to me. But I think a couple of different things on this. Number one, the business executive who's been of the CEO of TikTok, who has been in all of these hearings since 2021, since this has come up, since Trump in 2020 made this come up. Okay.
No, he's the one saving it. He never wanted to get rid of tech. What are you talking about?
He have you guys been watching all these hearings? He's Singaporean, and it's just such an egregious when people are like, this has nothing to do with racism. As you watch the hearings of this man and you watch our Congress over and over and over again accuse him of being a Chinese spy. It is so alarming. He literally starts laughing at one point and is like, and they say, are you part of the Chinese Communist Party? And he says, I'm Singaporean. And they're like, so yes? And he's like, no. And they're like, so are you, what nation are you a citizen of? He's like, Singapore. They're like, so China. He's like, no, I'm Singaporean. Yeah. And it's scary. Our lack of understanding as our government is accusing somebody who, by the way, has an American wife and kids. Yeah. Essentially of trying to spy on us while our own government continues to spy on us, which is not a secret. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. It's a very out there and spoken about thing. So it, like what Lon was saying earlier, our entire thing is that we want to be the greatest nation in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then why are we trying to be like the people that we claim to hate and say, well, here's a taste of your own medicine? If you listen to the inauguration, the through line of Trump's speech was, we're going to win. He said it like 15 times, which is a really interesting way of looking at governing your nation.
Mm-hmm.
Win what?
Yeah.
What are we winning? I didn't know we were playing a game. These are our lives, right? And I do feel like if you are going in with the mentality, we're going to win, it is playing games. And so if you see China playing this game, or a Singaporean man who is the CEO and accusing of being, it is all a game. So it's hard to know what's going to happen with TikTok when everybody who's doing this is playing games.
Mm-hmm.
And they're playing games with our lives. And why is this our lives? Because yes, this is the way we access information.
Mm-hmm.
This is the way we connect to community. This is the way we share. But it is also literally many people, thousands of people's livelihoods. This is the way that they survive. So that is scary. And of course, makes me want them to sell TikTok so that it can remain, as opposed to not sell it if they really are going to eliminate it. Number two, my second point, although my first was extremely long-winded, sorry for that, is that I woke up and was unable to do my job because I pay for a service called CapCut. CapCut does offer a free service, but the service that I use for all of my jobs that I run their social media is owned by ByteDance. It is called CapCut. I pay for it, and I couldn't access what I pay for.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like such a what do I do? And then looking into why they did that, because Meta is about to release their app in which you can edit on, and there will be a paid for version.
Yeah.
It just makes you realize we're all pawns in this game, all of us. It doesn't matter if this is something you use for your life, if this is something you use for information, if this is something you use to connect, to edit, to share, to make money. We don't care. We don't care what you're doing. Even if you've spent money on this app, we're going to eliminate it from you anyway.
No.
Joke's on you. So that's horrifying.
Yeah, I can't help. I'm not a huge TikTok proponent in general. Whatever. We've talked about it on the show, but I do find it upsetting when you see these clowns show up for the inauguration, and you realize between them, they pretty much own all of our organs for online communication, and that is upsetting. I find that upsetting. And so I can't help but, whatever concerns, legitimate or not, of TikTok, it does feel like, wow, this is one where the kids are able to say some stuff that we don't like, and we can't just get somebody on the phone and tell them to stop it. Let's fix that.
And did you see this week that now they've set their sights on Wikipedia? A
Oh my
bunch
God.
of different billionaires and tech CEOs, Elon, Chamath Palihapitiya, a lot of the Silicon Valley guys. All of a sudden, hey, did you notice that Wikipedia is really biased? You can't really trust Wikipedia, and everything is so woke and DEI. Wikipedia, we got to get rid of it. Because Wikipedia, just like TikTok, a platform that is not centrally controlled by the dudes in that row of people, and they don't like it. They want to have that online monopoly on the discourse.
We
And
don't want to know about
any-
the
any-
genocides that maybe Meta was able to help make happen.
Any rival platform that people are going to use to discuss the non-official narrative of that kind of stuff, there's a sudden and intense hostility to that idea.
Okay, so I don't want to run long, but I do want to ask you guys, connecting this back to the Severance of it all, and obviously Severance is a sci-fi fiction show, but science fiction is what I just invented a new genre, the sci-fi fiction show. How far do you think we're going to get down this road of these guys being able to control our information? Is it something that is outside?
Very far. I think very far, DJ. I think we're going to go very far down the road.
You don't think it's going to be, because I guess my hope is that it's like sand, that just you can't, at this point, things are too far. People will find a way to get information to each other. But that said, there's been plenty of information out there, and yet we
you
still
saw
have the
media-
insurrection crime president was sworn in. So it's
I-
like, well,
Yeah, I do think I think that my view of all this stuff is that it's like 30% more chaotic than anyone is really imagining. Like these guys are going to do their very, very best to take control over all of the major ways that people use, all the major platforms that people use to communicate online, and to gear those conversations in ways that are favorable towards them, their party, their point of view, whatever. They're all going to try their best. I'm fully confident that they are.
Yeah.
I just don't think they have that level of discrete power that they maybe have told everyone that they have. I don't think their algorithms are effective enough to do. Like, all you have to do is look at Twitter/X, which Elon Musk has been trying for years to exert total absolute control over the conversations that happen there. And he's made progress.
Yeah.
Like it's more right wing there than it used to be, and it's more hostile to certain kinds of speech and expression, without a doubt. But it is not absolute. It is he would love to turn a dial that says no one is allowed to make fun of me on here. He just doesn't have that power. He would love to turn a dial that says no one is allowed to be woke on here anymore. He just doesn't have that power. And
But
I
you
think that's
can
true across the board.
You can completely, though, eliminate certain things that help people with their tools. Like, it is ironic to me that one of the first acts that Trump did was sign that we are going to be releasing more on the JFK assassination. He's also said that he's going to be more transparent about DJ's favorite thing, the UAPs.
Yeah.
But so he's like, this is about an age of information, sharing information from decades ago. What about information? And I stand by that. That's of the 100 things he did. That's the only one that I was like, yeah, we should have more information about this. So, but that's not instead of having information about the times we're currently living in.
Yeah.
And if you guys saw on Instagram, on Meta, the next day after the election, you could not look up the hashtag Democrat.
Yeah.
You could look up the hashtag Republican, but you could not look up the hashtag Democrat. And I want to hear your point, Lon, but I'm just saying that the thing about this is that when you control the platforms, you can control how easy it is to access information. And we are in a society where easy is important because people will not try to push past barriers. Most of my friends have left X. They are completely off of it because of what you're talking about, because it has gotten harder to navigate and find your people. And it is more ruthless there. And if it takes you an extra 5 steps to find information, some people will, but a lot of people won't. And that's what they can do. They can put up enough walls and barriers to prevent people from getting easy access to information, which does mean that a lot of people won't get that information.
Exactly. I mean, I think we're talking. The question here was like, it's like worst case scenario. Like they can have a big impact. No, I'm not arguing against anything you're saying. I think you're absolutely correct. And I think that's what they can do is they can make it harder. They can put up barriers. They can create obstacles. But I don't think they have the ability to completely control this the way that they would like to project that they do. And I think that there's a lot of misinformation or deception that comes out in tech around the power of these platforms, the power of these algorithms. Like Netflix is a great example. They talk about, there's a cat there. They talk about all the time that what makes all these streaming services so great is that they're collecting all this data about your viewership. They're watching everything you watch, and they're learning about who you are as a consumer so they can serve you only the most perfect, algorithmically selected, curated content that you're going to want to watch. Max doesn't know shit about me. Like, all of their recommendation engines are horrible. They're all terrible at this. Netflix knows everything I've watched for like 15 years, and they don't know that I want to watch Squid Game season 2. I got to scroll down and find it. And I think it's across the board in all of tech. They're lying about how powerful these algorithms are and how they could use this data. They mostly don't have a clue. The trending topics on X, terrible. And so I think that makes us feel like being lied to for years and years about how effective these algorithms are, makes us feel like they have total 100% control over what we see and what we get fed and what kinds of topics we're interacting with. And I think they've got They got 70% control. They can make it harder to find the things you want. They can make it more obnoxious to use their platforms. They can put up all these barriers. They can even make one platform so bad that you leave and go to another platform. But I don't think that they can.
I love that you said leave and go to another platform, and DJ
And then
got
leave.
up. DJ was like, for you audio
gotta go to
listeners, DJ had a cat all
cat-free.
over him, and he got up. Lon said leave and get up, and DJ did.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a metaphor. It's a
it's
metaphor. It's like, as much as it feels like I feed the cat, you know what I mean? I have some sort of control over the cat. At the end of the day, if the cat's going to hop up on the table, the cat's going to hop up on the table.
Yeah.
And sometimes the cat has to hop up on the table. And that's us.
Yeah, that's
We're the
us.
cat.
I'm just sort of saying, like, I think people are picturing 1984, and it's more like a whack-a-mole game. Like, Big Brother's constantly looking for where Winston is going to head next and has to, like, cut that one off, too. And it's more chaotic than just autocracy realized.
And I don't know how I feel about, to your point, Lon. I'm in some ways I feel kind of mixed. On the one hand, I feel like we are lucky that the people in charge of this are some of the dumbest people to ever have existed.
Oh, yeah.
On the other hand, it's like, well, if we're gonna hand everything over to the fascists, could they just not be so embarrassing? Can they not be? Does it have to be these guys?
You the executive orders were clearly written with AI. Like,
it's
the
just
numbering is off.
It's like, God damn it, man.
And it really plays in our favor. Like, if the fascist takeover were being supervised by, like, you know, Nazis, like the original historical
people
Nazis,
hardened by World War I.
Terrible guys, very evil, super organized, very good at their job, efficient, effective managers. And like, we're really lucky we don't have like Goering level, Himmler level guys now.
Yeah, so I'm hoping. I've said this before. Lon stopped by my personal channel. This is not a politics show. Lon and I did a whole thing talking about it, and I do think, and I'm not talking anything dramatic or violent or anything like that, other than the stuff the administration is going to do. I am kind of thinking like, if they keep going as hard as they're going right now, I don't see the Trump administration lasting 4 years. I feel like if they do start doing the things they're saying they're going to do, it's going to be like, well, we're not going to do this. We can't do this.
I feel like there's only so many like levers you can pull on the U.S. government and system and economy before you just start messing everything up in a recognizable, immediate way. Like there's a few things that they're talking about, like 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada.
Yeah.
You know, like 60% of our fresh fruits and vegetables come from Mexico. Did you guys know? I looked this up.
Yeah.
So it's like most of our berries and avocados and tomatoes. Imagine everything with tomatoes in it getting 50% more expensive overnight.
Yeah.
Along with, you know, like car parts.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those come from Mexico too. Computer parts, like everything except the microchips, a lot of those come from Mexico too. So you're talking about stuff people buy all the time starts getting radically more expensive. So you do that, you fire hundreds of or thousands or tens of thousands of government employees all at once to try to save money. You do that. Like, they've got like 5 or 6 or 7 of those level plans, like dramatic, sweeping. Do you see the thing about wind power? He's like going to cut off.
In relation to entertainment, though, Lon, you think that will go up in price as well based on this, or you're just talking about now politics and fruit?
I'm talking about everything. I mean, I'm talking about literally everything. I think that if you send this many shockwaves to the economy all at once, like you fire, like suddenly there's thousands more unemployed people. Everything costs a lot more to buy, and whole economies and industries, their stocks are crashing, so people are losing their pensions, their 401ks. You know, like wind power, a lot of people are invested in wind power. If you just turn off the entire wind power industry overnight, people lose millions, people lose billions. And like, I don't like, if you do 5 or 6 or 7 of those changes all at once, there's a chance the entire economy just sort of spirals out.
Landman has taught me that oil companies use wind power.
Interesting. As our president said, interesting.
Exactly.
Interesting.
But I mean, but that's what, like, But Donald Trump's not thinking out the
One,
network effects
one.
of all these changes.
Well,
Ron!
but to this point, and we'll wrap up. To the point of the comment about like the political stuff, we elected a reality star to be our president, so it's all the same thing now. You know what I mean? I would also love to not care about this shit, but
Did you
we'll.
watch that?
Try to be helpful. Like, I think that we're such an echo chamber sometimes of here's what could happen and here's all the things that are wrong. But I think that the point of these conversations, or at least for me, what I try to do is, as we're talking about things being more difficult to access, and Lon saying 70%, I agree that it's not 100% shut down, which means that it is on us as a consumer to navigate this together and find ways that you can access information in a safe, educational way and share it. And that's what I hope we can do as entertainers with platforms, is instead of talking about doom and gloom and, oh my God, this is awful, and these are all the horrible things that could happen, what can we do to stay together as a community? What can we do to combat this so that we're not just sitting there talking about how awful things could get? Because that's not useful to us.
Yeah.
It did just happen.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
of course that's where our minds go.
Yeah.
But everything I look at is like, this is going to be horrible. And it's like, okay. So are we supposed to just roll over and die? No, of course not.
And also to that point, when it comes to, I'm going to use the fires example because it's a recent example, and Adam Conover did a show about it on his podcast that I thought was very informative about the fires, and he had an expert on, and one of the things that were mentioned was, while obviously climate change was a factor in it, there was a lot of local stuff that could be done to prevent something like that in the future. So, that's on our mind because we live here and on the West Coast in LA, but every part of the country is being impacted by stuff. So look at mutual aid in your area, especially when stuff is going on, especially with administration stuff that might be impacting you. Look at the people around you. Things might get trickier on social media, but like it or not, we are all in this together. And just to bring it back to our main conversation, don't be the person that looks at something like Blade Runner and be like, that looks cool, I want to make that future happen. Don't look at Severance and be like, let's make Severance real. No, we do these stories to say, don't do this. We tell these stories to be like,
Purge, DJ. You think we should try Purge?
Let's do the Purge movies are a lot of fun. What if we did a Purge? The Purge was right. No.
I mean, President Trump during the campaign did sort of muse about doing a purge. Remember, it would only take one day if you just let the cops do whatever they want and people would stop doing crime.
What I want desperately,
a mini purge.
If there's justice in the world, I want Donald Trump to find himself on a boat that's sinking, and then there's a shark, and he has to be like, "Oh no, it finally happened."
Do the battery? I have to do the battery thing.
It finally happened.
I would say closing with this thought. I think I've been thinking a lot about, after the election, everybody was like, we need left-wing Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
We need left-wing. We need the Democratic Nelk boys or whatever. I always come back. I think there's too many political, like specifically political shows and podcasts. I think everybody's sort of competing for those same eyeballs. I think more people who do shows about fun stuff, I think more people who have non-political followings should occasionally engage with these kinds of current events, and just like in the way that you remember Joe Rogan used to be about like MMA, his podcast. Like when his podcast first started, it was about doing drugs and isolation tanks and MMA. It like slowly drifted into more political topics. And I think that's what we really need, is we really need like blue Barstool, like Barstool shows are non-political. It just happens that Barstool is run by like a really hard right guy who's got very right-wing views, and it like infuses all of the content. And I feel like that's what we need. We don't need more like Air America, like Rachel Maddow's out there yelling at people to embrace Joe Biden. We just need more like shows, entertaining shows, podcasts, content people like, that's not being produced by lunatics.
What I'm hearing is that Roxy Stryer is the new Joe Rogan. Roxy.
Yeah. Should I change my bio to say that?
Yes,
The new
and you
Joe
should
Roxy
wear a
Stryer
and
experience.
you should wear a cowboy hat.
I watch Landman.
Yeah, and you watch
Yeah.
Landman. You start a Landman podcast.
I mean, you also love weed. You and Joe Rogan have that in common.
Yeah.
That's true. That is true. We both
Roxy,
like to interview people
you see,
a little differently, but
It's right there. Yeah.
Roxy, where can the kids find what you're working on?
you guys can find me everywhere at Roxy Stryer. I'm still working on my fire relief efforts so that I can be bringing as much aid to people who need it in real time on the ground. So you guys, if you find me on Instagram, you can see that I've been collecting Venmos. We've raised $7,500 so far. I think we're at 76 right now. And it has been unbelievable to watch the impact you guys have had on all of these people that we've been helping. So thank you so much for doing that.
Check that out, Juan. Where can the people find you?
Oh wow, I'm not doing a fire fundraiser. So I'm not socially engaged at all. You can find me on the terrible website that you shouldn't go on anymore because it's super fascist at LONS over there. I'm also on Blue Sky. I'm also at LONS on Blue Sky, so you can find me over there as well.
I'm mostly Blue Sky on Instagram. I'm mostly Blue Sky now. Not nearly the following, unfortunately, but it's a happier place. Anyway, for me, and I should have mentioned this earlier in the show, please go to dangerboycomic.com. I've got a new comic coming to Kickstarter very soon. If you go to dangerboycomic.com, you can sign up to the pre-launch page, so you'll be informed the second the campaign goes live. This is my first foray into doing superhero comics, and I wanted to do something a little different. So there's a cyberpunk flavor in there. There's a little bit of Super Sentai sprinkled in. I'm working with an incredible artist named Sean Peacock. So follow me. You'll see more stuff about that. But the best place to go is dangerboycomic.com and sign up to the pre-launch page so you can know more about that. You can find me everywhere that matters at DJ Talks Trash. And we will see you all next time.